when you buy that heater, you just made a decision to buy fuel for the next 10 or 20 years, right? And without thinking about it, you just devoted tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of your future wealth to that fuel, which is tragic if you have a renewable energy option, because that option means you're not buying fuel. So that money could be going back into your pocket.
Welcome to the Blue Ocean Solutions Podcast, where we dive into real conversations with business owners, innovators, and industry leaders reshaping the future of clean tech, construction, and the renewable energy sector. I'm Kreel Hutchinson, your host. Today, our guest is Paul Fenn, the owner, founder, and president of the Local Power LLC in the Haydenville, Massachusetts area. Today on the show, we're going to discuss his pioneering work in energy policy and finance, including the creation of community choice aggregation and green bonds, as well as his ambitious vision to empower communities to own their energy future. If you're a community leader, a renewable energy enthusiast, or anyone interested in the future of sustainable infrastructure, you will love this show. Paul's insights reveal how local action can drive global change in energy, offering a roadmap of true energy independence and reduced environmental impact. It's an example of how innovative policy and financial models are transforming the way we power our world. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Kreel, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. I was really looking forward to having you on the show. I'm excited to share with our audience all the great work that you've really had in your career. So for people who may be unfamiliar with you and the work that you've done, why don't you do a little bit of a self-introduction, explain a little bit of your background, who you are, and what you're currently up to?
Sure. Thank you, Kreel. I'm really a kind of an academic who got into an idea that drew me into a technical place. So starting in graduate school at the University of Chicago, I got really interested in the energy industry, primarily in the context of climate change. And I had some ideas about how the structure of the energy industry might be altered to include a degree of community control or energy democracy, and was really just interested in developing that possibility. This goes back 30 years. And then, gradually got drawn into different ideas for how to do that. And as you mentioned, the two main ideas were community choice aggregation, which allows communities to control their electricity and sometimes their natural gas sourcing. And then green bonds, which are another municipal tool that enables communities to finance and build their own energy supplies rather than just buying them. And so for the past 30 years, I've been working with various communities around the country, from big cities like San Francisco to towns like Ithaca, New York, that have clear political leadership that want to drive change in the industry. And I would just work with them to sort out how to do that.
Fantastic. So what would you say, having invested your career into this, what's really driving, what's your motivation of the work that you do in the world?
Well, I guess it really comes, I'm a historian, studied history in graduate school, and very focused on society and democracy, and many of the vagaries really of democracy, the difficulties of governing ourselves and of having a rational relationship to the conditions of our survival and our prosperity, the tendency toward conflict and toward violence, frankly, whether against other people or against nature, to achieve that prosperity, and sort of the challenges of how can we sort of live more peacefully on the earth? How can we more coherently manage our resources? How can we enter into a relationship with those resources where we are responsible, where we have some control, and have the knowledge to be competent in that space? So I guess I view it as a social challenge more than anything else. And it interests me a lot to try to help navigate that space and contribute toward, hopefully, a more coherent energy policy, but also coherent technological pathway, the development. Right now, the pathway is really between, you have renewable energy, but it's mostly been controlled by industry and finance, and it's in some ways lost political support. And so now you have the rise of nuclear, and there's a possibility things will shift toward nuclear. Yeah, so we're in this sort of haunted house in a way of very different futures that are in play when we talk about energy. But it isn't just a technological relationship, it's also a social relationship. And that's really what interests me.
I see. And over the course of your career and background building up to the project that you're, working on effectively as your main thing today, what has been the reactions both from, let's say, government regulatory side with the work and the ideas that you put forward, and then also on the community side, because, getting that buy-in from communities to support these ideas and wanting them truly, it's a good idea, but do they really see the vision for themselves? Can you talk about both of those interactions that you've had over the years?
It's a wonderful distinction, Creel. I think it's super good question. Yeah, I mean, on the government side, I deal with state governments and local governments, and state governments have a lot of control over energy. They're the main regulatory entity that decides resource questions and decides what you pay for, how much people pay for electricity, for gas, what's allowed to take place locally. So I work a lot with state governments. Those, frankly, in many ways are driven by crisis. That energy crises are the moments when you get change, when change occurs for the better or the worse. And so crisis is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for organized interests like nuclear industry, who can, if they're waiting with their lobbyists, they can come into the crisis and say, we have the solution. But if there's also another person in the room that has a better solution, the state tends to be receptive. And in crises, a certain kind of rise in the IQ takes place. So you go from the day-to-day mediocrity of politics into a what are we going to do moment. And those are really key moments. At the local level, municipalities have long been leaders in sustainability. They're the ones that have to actually deal with humanity. Local government in my view, is the real government, because that's where the people are on the street. They come into the meetings. If you have, a crime problem, it's very palpable. If you have an environmental problem, it's very palpable. If the water's poison and people are dying, you're seeing them die, you're dying, your children are dying. So there's a reality to local government that's lacking, I would say, in state government, and even more lacking in federal government, which is very abstract, very distant from human experience. So local government is that's where the people are, and there is a natural support base in local government for good ideas. At the same time that they're resource poor, municipalities in the United States in particular, have been subjected themselves to outsourcing, to offshoring. They have whittled away their resources to very little. And so they lack money, the funding, they lack staff capacity, they're constrained. So they're on the one hand, very human and very, I think, receptive to ideas about sustainability. On the other hand, they lack resources. And so I have to navigate that space with them, and I have to come up with resources. And frankly, I deal with that by focusing on communities that are very clear on their policy goals, even if they don't have so many resources. And I just try to work with that. On the human, sorry, pardon me.
Oh, please go ahead. On the human side, then?
Yeah, on the human side, I meant to answer as well. That, I would say, humans ultimately are the recipients of the systems that we have, right? So every voter, every citizen, every person has to pay an energy bill. They have to, the monthly electric and gas bill. They pay the gasoline bills for their cars. So they're bill payers. It's a major expense, particularly for low-income people. Their disposable income is going to energy. So it's a primary relationship for people. Everyone has those bills to pay. And maybe for the affluent, it's not that important, but for those who are not affluent, which is the majority, it is. So I think for most people, it's an economic relationship, and primarily, and they don't really have that much choice realistically. They have to buy what's cheapest. And so you have this very constraint. On the other hand, I think most people freely admit the ecological consequences and the human health consequences of energy use. I think there's very high level of recognition in the general population that climate change is real, that it's human caused, and that it's an urgent issue. And there's very high support and principle for renewable energy. At the same time, most people are not free to pay more to be green. And so that generally has been the sort of formula that's offered to the public by most public policy. If you want to be green, then you must pay more. It's a premium product, it's a luxury, and therefore tends to be kind of a virtue signaling environment. And that's where you've gotten a politicization of renewable energy in the general population. That's the rise of the Donald Trump phenomenon. You have this sort of resentment now of renewable energy and electric vehicles, which is very unfortunate. And also, I think, very unnecessary. But it's resulted from markets that present renewable energy as a premium product. What we try to do is arrange public policy that enables people to choose renewable options without requiring them to sacrifice their budgets. And so that's always been our approach. That's why we developed, aggregation. The purpose of community choice aggregation is to create more purchasing power as small consumers combine together, and they can more effectively afford renewable energy. They can get lower prices. And with green bonds, the same thing, to reduce the financing cost of built renewable energy. Because renewable energy does not use fuel, the primary factor in the cost of renewable energy is the interest rate attached to the debt on. And so reducing the interest rate is a way of reducing the cost of the energy generated. And so we've always been very focused on that. And we have very broad support, wherever we're able to deliver that. People are very willing they want to go green. They want to save the planet, but it's got to be affordable, and it has to be inclusive in that way, that it isn't just for the few. It's got to be common. And that's where there's this sort of societal element where we need to make choices as communities, not merely as individual consumers. The way that, communities have recycling and separation. People separate their paper from their plastic and their cans. And they do that because it's a community initiative, not because it's strictly a consumer choice. And I think that's where the energy is, to get people engaged in the new energy technologies, is by reframing energy as a community initiative, and then taking measures within local government to reduce the cost so that it's broadly affordable to people.
Yeah, it's such a powerful vision. So if I'm hearing you correctly, your job is threading the needle through several unique and potentially challenging aspects. So one, you have finding the right community that is open and willing to move forward with this, engaging in the right government at different levels. So there's going to be certain states or geographical locations that will be more receptive to this. Then you've got a lack of resources at these different levels. So being able to either access grants, that will probably be dependent on the larger state and federal levels, but then working with local people. So as you thread the needle through this to bring some of these initiatives forward, I'm sure there's a lot of conversations, a lot of work. Talk about where you are today with your current project as you have pulled this, needle through these different aspects and bringing together your current project, and which is unfolding.
Yeah, we're currently working in New York State, focused on Ithaca, New York. It's actually two towns, the city of Ithaca and the town of Ithaca, that are kind of yin and yang. And it's a college town, Cornell University there. It's, for the region, it's fairly well off. It's not, super expensive place to live, but it's not a poor rural town either. And, they have a very strong local policy. They have a local Green New Deal policy adopted by the city of Ithaca, and they have strong climate greenhouse gas reduction goals in the town of Ithaca. Very fairly urgent goals, fairly high bars. And, they brought us in, Local Power, in to help them implement their vision. And they've gone actually through a couple of waves of trying to do that. So it's not the first try. This is really the second try for them. And they were persuaded that they needed more leverage, right? More, not just financing basically, but they needed some of the structure that we brought to different markets. So we're trying to prove out a model, a new model, which is centered around interoperability of systems. So in the past, the models we developed were to aggregate, to use green bonds, and it was mostly focused on supply. To, in California, develop what we called CCA 2.0, Community Choice Aggregation, second version. And before that, in Massachusetts, 25 years ago, developed 1.0. 1.0 was just about buying renewable energy from the grid. 2.0 was about building it using green bonds. Now 3.0 is really about climate. And What that means is reducing greenhouse gas emissions across all major sources. And the major sources aren't just electricity. So we're kind of expanding the umbrella of what an aggregation could include to include not just electricity, but also natural gas. So we take over electricity service and natural gas service in that aggregation. And then we build a sort of a second track at the local level, because the aggregation is essentially a state authorized activity to buy electricity and natural gas. And so we create a kind of a second rail inside the municipal government to build up capacity inside the city itself to help people transition from essentially pipeline and grid energy to on-site energy in their home or on their city block. And so that's a transition that involves them changing from consumers into owners. It's a change in their relationship to energy, not just the community's relationship, but them individually as consumers. And that's really been our focus now, is to set up that system that involved writing a couple of local laws and a local plan, and everything is adopted by the town board and the city council, the formation of this combined sort of two-part program. And we're now just in the middle of community outreach and education to engage people in this new service.
Well, fantastic. So given your extensive experience in shaping energy policy and business models, what do you see as the single biggest challenge in translating groundbreaking energy concepts like this CCA 3.0, your climate model, into widespread community adoption?
That's the essence, Kreel, of the challenge. It comes down to it. That's why we've gotten so focused on cooperation, that people need to be engaged in new technologies that really present an intellectual leap. To buy, in this case, to transition from buying grid power and pipeline gas to on-site resources really involves taking decisions that today are separately made. Most people, when does somebody buy a new heater or hot water heater? When it breaks, right? It breaks, and then you got to replace it. And so, you'll tend to make the decision what kind of heater to buy in a very short period of time because you don't have any heat. And so the amount of thought that goes into what kind of heater should I buy is shockingly small, right? It's just like, please just replace my heater, turn it back on. And that's a problem, because when you buy that heater, you just made a decision to buy fuel for the next 10 or 20 years, right? And without thinking about it, you just devoted tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of your future wealth to that fuel, which is tragic if you have a renewable energy option, because that option means you're not buying fuel. So that money could be going back into your pocket. But that's a change in the relationship, where you change from thinking I'm a consumer of fuel and energy into I'm an owner of an asset, of a real asset. That requires engagement, and that requires a lot of education. And not just generic education, that it requires that a bunch of analytical work be done, because you've got to have someone that you trust helping you make a decision to change your relationship and change that technology and commit your resources to it in a way that you've never done before. The same would apply to buying an electric vehicle, right, versus a gasoline vehicle. How do you compare apples to oranges? And that's really what it really presents to a person is, I now eat an apple and now I eat an orange. It's not just a different kind of apple. I can compare them. No, it's just different. It's completely different. It's qualitative leap, really. And so that's where we're really focused on engagement. And beyond that, and this is one of the really fascinating, for me, elements of this kind of work, that something is happening technologically that I think is not widely noticed for some reason, which is what I call energy convergence. And that is that essentially what are today completely separate consumer choices and completely different technologies and industries and completely different fuel systems and industries. A gasoline car, a natural gas heater or heating oil heater, liquid fuel, and a home powered by the grid. These three technologies are converging. The electric vehicle is becoming a battery on wheels. The technologies are now in the market for electric vehicles to power homes. They're just on the market for consumers. They've been on the market for governments for a number of years. This is a radical shift where the car is no longer a separate fuel system and a separate vehicle that just stands dead outside your house. It's now a major resource to power your house. The average electric vehicle has the equivalent of 4 to 10 Tesla walls in it, like people paying $15,000 for a Tesla wall, to a battery wall. You've got this car sitting out there. So with the proper charger, you can power your house for a significant number of hours per day on that car. Same goes for geothermal loops and heat pump systems that can also function as thermal batteries. What used to be simply a tank of heating oil, fuel, or propane, or gasoline, or a natural gas pipeline heating fueling a combustor in your basement. Now you have effectively a thermal battery in your basement. So you have a thermal battery in your basement with hot water or heat. You have an electric battery out in your driveway. In other words, these can all basically be networkable appliances. They can be subject to a single control system. And by networking those appliances, the economics of each of those devices is completely transformed, right? The so-called cost of your energy when they're functioning together is very different from what it was when they're functioning separately. And moreover, the grid that you depend upon now completely for your power is really not nearly as necessary as it used to be for you to have energy. So things are shifting underneath our feet, and I don't think that there's much awareness of it. Furthermore, some of the best, most cost-effective renewable energy systems that exist at the local level, like geothermal loops, are basically too expensive for single individuals to afford them. At the same time, that their paybacks are far superior to lower cost appliances that most people are buying, like air source heat pumps, right? Everyone's installing air source heat pumps now, mini splits, and they work. They're getting better, but compared to a geothermal heat pump, there's no comparison. So if you're able to share a ground source heat pump with your neighbor or with two neighbors, it's a far more compelling investment, right? You reduce the upfront cost burden, and your payback is, say, 4 or 5 years, you're banking, versus 10 to 12 to 13 years on a mini split, right? Before you're actually saving money. And so there are these opportunities for cooperation now in a way that has not really been the case historically, to lower the cost of energy systems. But cooperation is obviously not a natural reflex in the United States. People tend to want to have their own things, own their own devices. And so there are a lot of really important opportunities for people to cooperate at the community level, at the street level, at the neighborhood level, to be able to take leaps that have real economic returns and are palpable investments. But that is going to require quite a lot of work with the general public, and to change the understanding, to set examples, to demonstrate these new technologies, and to show people a new way to relate to energy, as opposed to just making different technology choices. Sorry.
No problem. You covered a lot of ground there, which is fantastic. And we are living in a very exciting time that has huge opportunity, as you've mentioned, but also huge challenges. And it seems like, someone like yourself who has, you've been in this world for so long, so you understand, you see the potential, but being able to basically sell that idea to a consumer, to the community, to get that engagement, I guess that's the other hat that you need to wear as an entrepreneur and as an advocate in this world of being like, speaking to government and regulatory bodies, getting buy-in and an approval there, but then turning around and having to advertise or market the idea to communities so that there's real engagement from business owners and homeowners that see the vision that you just painted there. How do you do that? How do you bridge that education so you get people brought on board with the way that you're seeing the world and the opportunities there?
We're just getting started at that, frankly. And traditionally, we've gotten involved in the politics of energy campaigns, so we've run campaigns. And otherwise, we've worked behind the scenes a lot, to get these different programs launched. And we've just in the past couple of years sort of redefined ourselves as a program implementer. And that's what we're doing in Ithaca. We're implementing both the gas and electricity supply and separately the local, what we call Own Your Power program. And so we're just getting into that. It's really new to me, and I can't say I feel like it's a strength, it's a weakness basically, but something that we're just gonna try to navigate. And we do have a lot of great interest in this on the industry side. I think people recognize the opening that might be created here because that's really the challenge on the consumer side is like what's actually available to a consumer today. And while we tend to think of everything as a market, it really isn't. That markets are very constrained, and there are invisible barriers, particularly in the energy industry, that make it tricky for consumers to navigate these choices. And so that's really what we're trying to pilot in Ithaca is like, how do we do that? How do we engage people? So we're setting up a platform on the web. We are soliciting consumers to enter into a discovery process where we help them to evaluate their choices. We ask for their permission to analyze their various energy uses in their vehicle and their heating and for power, so that we can sort of come up with a preliminary specification for what might optimally work for them. We're also helping consumers engage with their neighbors to join together to share energy systems, to share electric vehicles, electric vehicle chargers. Some of these technologies I mentioned where there are real economic gains to sharing. So it's really just the beginning stage of doing this in Ithaca. But, that's our hope, is that we could effectively engage people to kind of take that sort of discovery, I don't know what the right term is, mission, to explore new territory in energy and find the opportunities for themselves and for their neighbors to really change the way that they think of energy and the way that they relate to it. So we'll see. It's definitely the tricky part of what we're doing now. Is that it does depend upon people, not just governments, to make choices and to want that.
For our audience, people will be at different levels inside the renewable energy industry, maybe even trying to start community incentives like you're up to. From a perspective point of view, because Local Power LLC is small, do you having to self-generate that advertising and marketing yourself, or is the government on board with you? They've allocated certain funds that then you can turn around and help you in that. How does the actual mechanics of the business side work on your end?
We do have some help. We're partnered with the city and the town, so they put up some advertising budget to promote the program, and they are also themselves participating as energy users in the program. So we're engaging with them to investigate their opportunities for municipal buildings and fleets and things like that, to set some examples. But it really is at this point word by mouth. We don't have financial backing for what we're doing. In some ways, we don't want it, because the whole premise here is that we're helping consumers make choices and not trying to sell them something. We're trying to be neutral to the supply, to bring in the vendors and developers that build these systems, to set up the procurement for those entities to make proposals and to bid pricing for these systems, and then to help consumers evaluate those bids. So it's really essentially a brokerage model where we're representing the interests of consumers. And that means we don't come in with Wall Street money that wants to finance all these projects, because that means they would own those projects in effect.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So it's essentially mom and pop, I guess you'd say.
And as you look forward to, the rest of 2026 and beyond, what are your strategic priorities for where you'd like to see, the CCA 3.0 model take off?
Well, in Massachusetts, we're focused somewhat in Massachusetts and California at this point. In New York, we're not really allowed to do CCA 3.0 fully, because that would be essentially a totally combined program, and the state regulator wants them to essentially be kind of firewalled. So that's why we have these two separate rails. But in Massachusetts and California, there are no sort of firewalls like that. So we're looking to implement the program in those two states. I'm obviously based in Massachusetts, but I'm from California and spent most of my career working there. Massachusetts is 70% of the population is served by CCAs today. And that's 90% of the eligible population that could be in CCAs is in a CCA. So that's virtually the whole state. And that's pretty rich environments. As in California, there are 250 cities serving 15 million people that today. That's also, most of the coastal population of California. This is pretty rich environments. And we're hoping to bring this sort of philosophy of energy, if you will, to those two states to try to spread the model around. So we'll see what happens.
Excellent. And as you kind of look towards the future, if you could have a magic wand and you could wave it and you could remove some of the real, let's say, bottlenecks or challenges facing, the vision of you implementing this philosophy on a larger scale, what would those bottlenecks be? You would wave the wand and remove.
That's a really good question. Do you think I'd have a clear answer? Sometimes I'm not really sure what the real bottleneck is. I mean, custom is the major bottleneck. We're accustomed to paying those bills, and we're accustomed to pumping gas at the pump, and we're accustomed to live the way we live. And so it's human inertia, I think, is the main barrier. I mean, utilities also present barriers. Utilities, our electric and gas utilities, are the sort of feudalism of the postmodern age, right? They're these fixtures that are unmovable and who demand their share, and who essentially maintain a system of energy rents, is what I call it, and that expect that revenue, that depend upon the revenue. And they enjoy the protection of state regulatory commissions, which, when I say protection, obviously they regulate those entities, but they also protect them financially, guarantee their returns on their assets which are continually being refinanced. And so it's a debt that never goes away. That certainly presents one of the barriers to change as well. So I would think it's really those two. But I mean, we also have a really problematic political system, frankly, and the influence of energy industries in state legislatures and obviously in Congress is incalculable. We live in an economy that's driven by energy, so it isn't just like a commodity or that we're talking about. It's really the backbone of all human economic activity and all human personal activity. What would we do without electricity and gas and heating fuels? We would basically die. And so it really is this core component of our way of life, and it presents a great kind of mass or weight upon change. It makes it very difficult, the most difficult to change, which is actually the original reason why I got into energy, realizing this is like the biggest thing there is. Everything needs it, right? Whatever you say, whatever we talk about, they're using energy. And so it's like energy is underneath everything. And I'm not sure this is a magic wand, but it's somewhere in between, the inertia of the human mind, the political inertia of special interests in our political system, that I guess you'd find if I had two magic wands, maybe.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, you've raised some very eye-opening. I think people are aware of the complexity of the issue, but you've been able to articulate it here, which is refreshing. And yes, these are not easy solutions, but to remain optimistic and positive at this time in humanity that we will figure out a way. Having spoke to so many entrepreneurs and business owners here, I really see, there's a willingness to try to make sure that all hands are on deck when it comes to renewable energy sector. We shouldn't be choosing winners. We should allow all ideas to have enough runway to see if they're good ideas or not, rather than already like pre-selecting who's going to win and who's not. So I think you've articulated a little bit of that of like the regulatory and administrative levels can get involved and kind of like mess things up. I think from a humanity point of view, I think there's a lot of good people like yourself doing good things in the world, creative ideas, and moving that forward. So I appreciate you here sharing that with our audience. For our audience that would like to get a hold of you or maybe continue the conversation or find out more about your work, how do they find you, Paul?
Please, our main website's localpower.com. The New York website is localpower.net. So you can look at either place. That's sort of the customer service end, and localpower.com is sort of more our general business contact. But there's plenty of information there. We've had the same website for 20, 30 years now. So there's way too much on that website to read if you're curious.
Cool. Thank you so much, Paul, for being here. To our audience, If you've appreciated, if you've enjoyed the conversation, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and share with somebody who may also find interest in hearing today's episodes. Thank you so much for being here on another episode of Blue Ocean Solutions Podcast. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Kreel.
All right, Paul. Thank you so much. That was excellent.
Yeah, do okay? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How did that feel for you?
You're a quick read. I don't know how you figure all this stuff out.
What do you mean?
Well, you seem to understand the material really well.
Well, you know what? I try to come prepared, and I do my homework, and then I try to generate interesting questions around perspectives and so forth. So I appreciate that feedback. I want to ask good questions and allow you the runway to really explore the ideas and the concepts that you're really so familiar with, and just give you the time to flesh that out and get that out. So I think that was a great conversation, and I learned a bunch.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you, sir. I much appreciated.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Good. So moving forward, give me about a week for my editing team to do the edits. I'll send you an email that will have a link. In that link, you'll have access actually to the transcript, to everything that we've done today, but there'll be one folder which will be called exports. It will be written in the email, and that will have 5 different clips that you can use that have already been edited, branded, they're ready to go, and you can use them on, whatever medium you want to. I will also do the live podcast. The final edit will go onto my YouTube channel. So I will send you in the email, also send you a link to that. So make sure to subscribe. And then once your podcast is live, that's a very easy way to share the interview or the podcast with, people in your community or promote it. They can just go to YouTube and watch the whole thing. So give me about a week, Paul, and we'll get that to you.
Great, Kreel. Thank you so much. I look forward to watching it.
Okay, perfect. You and I are already connected on LinkedIn, so I will also make a post there whenever the interview goes live, and I'll tag you in it. So you'll probably get a notification. So that's an easy way that you can share that with your audience, and we can just, promote it to a wider range. So take a look for that.
I'll definitely do that.
Okay, perfect. And then finally, I wanted to present an idea to you. Something that I do with clients of mine, and it might be a fit, it might not be for you because of where you're at in your stage, but something that we do, which we have found to be effective, is doing some marketing and advertising for clients that want to basically educate the public on what they have going on. So, and we normally do that through traditional means, but it would be like, Facebook is a great place that I think would be a good fit for you guys. Like in the area that you want to engage the community, we could have targeted, campaigns that would raise the awareness about what you're doing, bring those people into your world so that there could be continued education and training on that. I know you're kind of getting going in that advertising realm, trying to spread that out. And so I just wanted to make, if you felt like there could be an opportunity to support you or help you or share some ideas around that, we're available. We would be open to that. Would that be of interest to you?
Sure. Yeah. If you've got information, please send it over and I'll have a look.
Yeah. Generally what we do is I would book a secondary call. I would call it a discovery call, and basically ask you very clear questions around what exactly you're doing or what you want to accomplish in the region. So basically gather a bunch of information, and then I would create a customized solution for you. Because providing services, you can provide one service, but it's not going to actually be what works for a person. So it's more so understanding really clearly what you want to accomplish in the area, and then I do some research on that and then create a customized solution that I feel would be effective in getting there. So would you be interested in, booking a follow-up call? Maybe give us, 30 minutes and we can discuss the project in a little bit more in detail.
Yeah. Why don't we do it maybe in a couple of weeks? I've got leaving town shortly. I should go to Ithaca and back next week, but possibly the following week after that, we could do something.
Yeah. So how about we book it out 2 weeks from now, which would be March 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
How about we do the same time? It would be 10 o'clock for me, noon for you. Or we can do it a little earlier if you like me, and maybe the exact same time, which would be 9:30 for me, 11:30 for you.
11:30 would be good. Yeah.
Yep. So that's Tuesday, March 3rd. I will send you an invite, a Google invite, and we can just meet on Facebook. I'm sorry, meet on Zoom.
Good.
Okay.
Very good. All right.
Great. Paul, thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful trip next week. It sounds like you're going to be on the road, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Wonderful. Really enjoyed meeting you. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right. Okay.
Bye-bye.